VenomousStare, let's talk the final week of the NFL season. So last week, obviously, it was a very tumultuous, interesting sort of week in the sense that we had a game canceled, which almost never happens. And it was the sort of perfect storm of events in terms of in a very, very weak, uninteresting NFL year where the games are so often unwatchably boring. And even NFL Red Zone has really just become very tedious and boring to watch. You have a product that is absolute garbage being put out on the field consistently. You've reached the point where you've nerfed defense down to where you can never even hit anyone hard. Just insanely boring. That was the most fun thing to watch about football. The offenses are overrated. They've made a ton of unforced errors this season. You had teams like the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Colts, who you should have been able to pencil in for at least 8 wins, show up dead on arrival week after week after week. So when the Bengals and Bills are going to play each other in this Monday night game, holy crap, it was so exciting. The teams are very close record-wise. It was going to have a lot to do with the top 3 seeds of the AFC. 2 talented teams with marketable quarterbacks and interesting skill position players and solid defenses. Legitimate playoff teams, probably the 2 best teams in the AFC, if you don't count the Chiefs. They're 2-3. And they just straight canceled the game. And that has sort of led to a situation where they played a couple games yesterday at the time of this video's recording on Saturday, and that was the Titans-Jags. The Titans overrated, dead on arrival, no quarterback. Henry, sort of banged up all year, off and on, hasn't really looked the same. They lost. Good for the Jags. They snuck in to that 4 seed. Now, if you don't remember, obviously the division winners are seeds 1 through 4, and then the wild cards are the rest of the seeds. So even though the Jags are only a game above 500, they're still going to be that 4 seed, even if a team like, say, the Chargers has more wins than them because of the wild card, right? You can see that right here. Look at this shit, big fucking droopy headliner ad. But yeah, this is them 9-8, and then the Chargers with 10 wins. So if you win your division, regardless of record, you're going to be higher seed than the wild cards. And the way that this works is obviously like the top seed plays the bottom seed. So we can go ahead and talk about the implications of the season. So after that game was canceled, which was crazy because of the fantasy football implications, remember, that's fantasy Super Bowl, and a lot of guys have really relied heavily on the Bills and Bengals fantasy options. Because let's just think about, like, you have all these great options as far as Burrow, Mixon, Chase, Allen, Diggs. These are some of the best offensive weapons in the league. And for that to come down to Monday night and for the game just to get canceled, I'm sure it screwed up a lot of fantasy Super Bowls. And the Bengals are really butthurt about it, and they don't really have any right to be. And a couple of funny things is whenever the injury happened, the NFL, of course, just ran a whole hour of ads, There was no decision being made in terms of let's get this guy off the field safely and continue the game. There was no decision being made in terms of this is really bad, we've just got to call the game. Oh, they just kept milking that ad money. Couldn't get enough of the ad money. It's very, very serious injury that the guy suffered. And you see all this virtue signaling on the internet. Oh, prayers to this guy. Oh, I feel so bad for him. Can you believe that some people wanted to finish the game? And then it's like, in this endless sea of virtue signaling, you never see anyone to have the stones to say, so why did this athlete in the prime of his life suddenly go into cardiac arrest at 25? I wonder what would cause that. Maybe it's that a vaccine the NFL's been shilling, sending Fauci stooges to all the different NFL teams to feed them the company lines, finding the shit out of Cole Beasley over and over and over. And anytime I see one of these posts about praying for Hamlin, it's just like, yeah, I hope he gets better too, but we know why he went down. It wasn't a concussion. It wasn't player safety. They don't need to change the rules. So if you're gonna tweet about it, have the stones to talk about why he randomly collapsed on the field and why he almost died. Don't make 15 posts about how bad everyone who thought the game should have kept going was. Like, fuck off. Ram that virtue signaling up your box. So we got the Bills have already won their division easily despite that game. And the Pats and Dolphins are going to go into an interesting little battle here in the final day where the Dolphins need the Pats to lose and they need to win to get in because the Pats hold the tiebreaker. Remember, the Dolphins were 8-3 at one point, a tremendously Dick Road, gassed-up team in the offseason. One of these flash-in-the-pan, flavor-of-the-month offseason teams that has all the big-name signings. Remember when Christian Kirk got signed? Have you even fucking heard of him this season? Man, he's overrated. And so that's the one thing that sticks out in my mind about like this offseason and the receivers is the Christian Kirk deal. And you look at the receiver list this year. Oh, it's the names you would expect. Justin Jefferson had a great year. Tyreek Hill had a great year. And you're sitting there looking, where's Christian Kirk and all of his fucking money? Nowhere to be found. He's not any good. He'll never be any good. He's above average at best. But the Pats haven't looked that good. They've choked a lot of dumb games. When Mac Jones is a rookie, you can sort of cut Belichick some slack. In the year that Brady leaves, you can sort of cut Belichick some slack. But, the crux of the issue here is that Mac Jones has had enough time to develop. This team shouldn't be 8-8. If Belichick is as good as people said he was, this team wouldn't have been struggled and lacking an identity since Brady left. They haven't been terrible since Brady left, but literally every year since Brady's been gone, they've looked sort of disjointed and not that good. They lack an identity. They lack a true win condition. It is worth mentioning though that the games they do win, a lot of times it is just like a Bill Belichick like defense first build order. But you might need like a flashy offensive coordinator on the Pats. Like the idea that Matt Patricia is going to do anything creative is laughable. But the Dolphins, everyone's slurp team. This is one of those, and this happened to me firsthand. This is one of those teams that was so hyped and so sucked off that you had multiple different people like in the offseason going, oh, I've got a hot take. The Dolphins are going to be great. I had multiple different of my friends come to me like independently and be like, oh yeah, the Dolphins. Yeah, Tua overrated, injury prone. I hear a lot of people say he'll never be the same. Who knows? But regardless, when a guy enters the early part of his career with that many concussions and it's back to... Those are the sort of injuries that can snowball out of control. It's almost like when D. Rose blew a knee out for the second time and you're like, you really can't take much more of this. And that's what the Dolphins sort of are. I think, Tua's peak ability is maybe 7.5 out of 10. Even if he never gets hurt, the best he would have been is a 7.5 out of 10. It's a team that tanked multiple seasons for Tua. He just was never that good. Sure, he's above average, maybe even good on some level, but this team has completely fallen apart. Their defense is overrated. The defense has been horrible in the last 5 weeks. And just not a playoff-worthy team. And I don't want to see the Pats make it in because they're just going to make it in and be boring and lose in the first round. I would rather see the Dolphins make it in, but it's not going to happen. The Jets, hilariously, 6-3 at one point, 7-4 at one point. All the hype in the world, really good defense. And a team that at the beginning of the year was pretty fun to watch. Breece Hall, a tremendous running back. Him going down for the year really hamstrung them. They also lost their best offensive lineman. And with the addition of Sauce Gardner on defense, they really sort of formed a coherent team identity as a defense-first, sort of grind them down team, led by Robert Saleh, a defensive-minded coach. Sort of one of those bald bulldog types, but I haven't seen a lot from them outside of those first few weeks. Once Breece Hall went down and it became obvious that they weren't going to be able to run the ball, that was it, because quarterbacks like Zach Wilson, who are just fucking bad, you can't ask them to throw 50 times a game. You can't line up in shotgun and have them read the defense. He can barely fucking read English. He's like Floyd Mayweather. How anyone thought this little kid who played 6 big games at BYU his whole fucking career was going to be anything is a mystery to me. It just blows my mind what some of these quarterback evaluators think when you have guys like Mitch Trubisky and Zach Wilson who not only are highly sought after, but teams trade up. They're taking these fuckers second overall, and they're not just taking them second overall because, well, we ate shit last year and our GM's a moron and we have this pick and we've got to take a quarter. No, they're trading up to get these guys, and they're horrible. And you look at their college careers, even if you're not a big college football guy, you're like, oh, he played here and did this? Oh, is he prolific in what he did? Like Daniel Jones is another good example. At least Daniel Jones turned out to be like an average, serviceable starting quarterback, but it's like, oh, he was at Duke. We're talking football here, right? Duke? Yeah, oh yeah, he was at Duke. Well, was he shredding ACC? No, he looked okay. But Daniel Jones, the reason he's improved and gone from being sort of bad to being decent is because he's really cut down on the turnovers this year. He was a fumble machine in the first few years of his career, a guy who threw a lot of dumb interceptions. They have put the ball in Saquon's hands a lot more, which makes Jones's life easier. It's sort of how you see with Zach Wilson, where when Breece Hall was destroying everyone, hey, it made Zach Wilson's job a lot easier. So that's the AFC East. The Pats without Brady really are like the easiest team to root against. And the Dolphins are chokers, and the Jets are a joke, and the Bills are as good as I thought they would be. AFC North, in the past, this is a really good division. The Browns basically punted their season, thirsting for Deshaun Watson. They won a few games early with the running game, but overall, not a great team. I was sort of enjoying like the Baker Mayfield Browns ground and pound era where they would win like 8, 9, 10 games every year, but part of me wonders, how good is Deshaun Watson really? How good was he at Houston? Like an 8 out of 10 quarterback, like really good. How much was taking that time off after getting all those tuggies, did that hurt him? Hard to say. Will he ever reach that 8 out of 10 form again? Because if you've watched the Browns this year, he looked pretty shitty in the first few games and pretty disjointed in the subsequent ones. After a whole training camp and learning the offense and the new coaches, yeah, maybe he'll be back in his old form next season, but the Browns just punted this season, and that's a fucking disgrace, frankly. When you have the Browns, a defensive lineman they have, Garrett, and their 2 running backs, this is a team that was better than the Steelers. Let me put it to you this way. Pittsburgh Steelers, they basically did the big dick Mitch Trubisky meme, which what happens with a lot of NFL teams is you'll have it's so funny, like your big quarterback will leave, like your Roethlisberger, for instance, your franchise guy, and then it's like, who's available on the free agency market? Well, pretty much no one. No one's available on the free agency market. Just some fucking burnout that couldn't cut it on the Bears. Oh, we'll take him. Well, after they lost 7 games on purpose, they switched to Kenny Pickett, and they're okay again. But this is a fucking disgraceful team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a team that in a normal NFL year where there wasn't so much disappointment, this team would have won 4 fucking games. But only in a year where you have the Matt Ryan Colts win 4 games and let Russ eat shit and die on the fucking Broncos with 4 wins. This is the sort of seasons you have to have a shitter team like this win 8 games. Ravens, a flashy, gimmicky team led by Lamar Jackson, who's hurt, and they're dead. They're DOA. It was funny for that one year when Harbaugh figured out how to make that gimmick offense work. They look pretty good, but the thing about these running quarterbacks is they have a shelf life, an extreme shelf life. We saw Jalen Hurts go down for a few games this season. Nick Sirianni, anytime it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, he's lining up in the wishbone and having Hurts fucking run up the center's ass. You think that's a build order that can be replicated infinitely? You're an idiot. And there were other quarterbacks that went down as well that were known for running styles. Justin Fields. Fields was completely brain dead for the first 6 games, and then they told him, just run around like college, LOL, you're not capable of throwing. What happened? He had some great fantasy games because obviously rush yards scale very well in fantasy. And what ended up happening was big fucking surprise, he got hurt. You can't play that style in the NFL, even with the laughable mollycoddled rules and nerf to shit defense. It's not going to work. You hit too hard. So, Ravens are DOA. This is a team that would have won 7 games in a regular season. Not any good. No real offensive weapons. Really just good coaching that they got 10 wins and lack of competition. The Bengals are really good. Started sort of shaky. Found their stride. I think they'll make it either to the AFC. They'll either lose to the Chiefs or the Bills. Like, they're the 3rd best team in the AFC. The AFC South, repugnant disgrace. The Titans were sort of an overrated run-first team for a couple years that were above average with a good defense, but whenever you have your quarterback and running back go down and you were never that good to begin with, you're going to suffer. And Henry really hasn't looked the same since he had that great season, I'll be honest with you. And they played a game last night against the Jags where essentially all they had to do was beat the Jags and they got fucking embarrassed. So the Jags won that division. This is just a disgrace. Both the South divisions in football are fucking abominations. As the Titans aren't terrible, but they really underachieved. And the Colts were a team with a phenomenal running back and an established veteran quarterback that was supposed to at least win 8 games. This was a disgrace where basically they completely bombed out, fired their coach halfway through the season. It was just a completely fucked year, just like the Panthers year where it was just a disaster and they fired their coach. The Texans blatantly aren't trying, sell the team, LOL. The Chiefs, best team in the league. I think they'll make the Super Bowl. Not overrated in any way, really well coached. Chargers, probably the worst coached team in the league. Really good on paper. They'll choke in the playoffs due to bad coaching. Their coach is like a Madden online or level dimwit. Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos, you got to remember in the preseason how fucking slurped this division was. Everyone pretended this division was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. Can all 4 teams make the playoffs? Look, you got a scrub coach for the Raiders and a dysfunctional franchise that gave up on Derek Carr. And it's just a fucking joke team. It's a joke team with no vision. You set yourself back years by firing Gruden. Oh, he said something mean in 2011. Who cares? Your team's a joke. You're gonna waste Carr. You're gonna waste Jacobs. Ruggs ruined his life. From where the Raiders are now compared to a year and a half ago, night and day difference. The Raiders are a fucking disgrace now. Broncos traded away their future for a guy who was always overrated in Russ, but a guy who's been washed for 3 years too. Just a total clown franchise, even worse than everyone would have thought. Paying Melvin Gordon all the money in the world to do nothing, they just had to cut him. Just a fucking disgrace. And like whenever you look at the NFL this year and you're like, why was it so disappointing? Like, when I tuned into football, why frequently was it so uninteresting? And even if I was watching Red Zone with my friends, it's just like not worth watching. Well, the Broncos and the Raiders were supposed to be good and they were a fucking joke. Same with the Rams and the Cards. The Rams and the Cards are supposed to compete for the NFC title. What'd they do? Nothing. Both of those coaches might get fired. Probably what happened to Sean McVay and Cliff Kingsbury as far as their offensive minds go? And don't give me Kyler Murray's injury. That team was fucking dead before he got hurt, alright? You know, he's got his leg propped up playing the new COD game at the moment. He's in hog heaven. Murray was probably running around hoping his knee would go on him just so he could play more COD. Alright, so the NFC, the Eagles and the boys. Hilariously, if the Eagles lose to the Giants today and the Cowgirls win, the Cowboys will win the division. That'll never happen. The Giants, who are the first wild card seed and have nothing to gain from winning, are going to be playing their bench players. You know, just Davis fucking Webb, no Saquon, so that's really what you have to look forward to. If you're the Cowboys, the Giants are essentially going to lose on purpose, and you're going to be stuck here if you're the Cowboys. And it's such a big swing because you go from potentially being like second or third and getting to play one of these shitter wildcard teams to having to face Tom fucking Brady in the first round. And I've been saying all season how the Cowboys are going to choke in the playoffs, how they're overrated, and how I don't trust them. Well, could you picture an easier way for them to bomb out in the first round than having to play playoff Tom Brady? Because if you look at some of these other teams, they're actually better. Like, they played the Vikings already. They raffle stomped the Vikings. The Vikings are probably the team that have taken advantage of the league going so downhill and being so weak this season. They're not any good. Like, they have a few offensive weapons. Their defense is pretty soft. Kirk Cousins is a big game choker. This team is not a fucking playoff threat. They only won the division because the Packers traded away their only weapon, and the Packers have been overrated for years, and suddenly they couldn't be fucking carried by the refs anymore. So the Eagles are just going to walk over the Giants, and then they're going to get the first round bye. And as far as the Dallas Cowboys go, this is a team that I'm expecting to crash and burn. The Giants are a joke team that had no right being in the playoffs and had a bunch of comebacks early on in the year, undeserved wins. The Commanders are a fucking joke. The logo switch is a fucking joke. Their owner's a fucking joke. Their quarterback situation and coach is a fucking joke. Only in this very weak NFL season does this team win 7 games. Vikings, overrated. The Lions and Packers play tonight, and they're both 8-8, but unfortunately the Seattle Seahawks have to lose for this to be like a playoff game, because if Seattle wins, then the Packers are just in. Great. We'll get to see Rodgers basically get like a New York Yankees level of calls throughout the whole playoffs and still lose. But I like Coach Dan Campbell of the Lions. I support the Lions, and I really want them to win this game. And God, making the playoffs would be so great after starting off 1-6 or 1-5 or whatever it was. And if they can win and make the playoffs, that'll save Dan Campbell's job. If the Seahawks lose and then they lose this game and get embarrassed by Aaron Rodgers, which is like probably what's going to happen, then Campbell might get fired. But I think if Campbell got fired, it would just set the Lions back. I think if you throw out like the first 5 weeks, like the Lions are legitimately building towards something and improving as a team, it would just be really cool to see them in the playoffs. They haven't been in the playoffs forever. I think 2014 was the last time, and that was the year where they ran into the Tony Romo Cowboys, and the Cowboys almost lost, and then went on to lose to Aaron Rodgers when the refs gifted him an undeserved win, as usual. Bears are a fucking atrocity. Trubisky, Fields, like the GM just doesn't have a clue. The Tampa Bay Bucks, they won their horrific division. This is a division full of the Saints who have had no identity or ability to consistently win games since Sean Payton and Drew Brees left. Like, ooh, Michael Thomas, like hurt all the time, gassed. Winston was never good. He was never the answer. This is a team whose win condition is to get into the goal line and have Taysom Hill line up in a gimmick formation and run it up the gut. It's not a serious team. You should have just had Taysom be the full-time quarterback. Probably would have been about the same result, but come on. Carolina Panthers, my team, sewer team, disgraceful, disgusting. You thought they might be average this year with Darnold and Baker both. Both were horrible, banged up by injuries, banged up by incompetence, poorly coached. Matt Rule, oh, big 6-year deal. We got to give Matt Rule they fired him. They're just going to have to pay him for those 4 years. This was the most disastrous season in Carolina Panthers history. This is worse than 2014 when they won 1 game and got the first overall pick. In terms of level expected, strength of competition, and what ended up happening, this is just a brutal year. And you're like, well, how could it be that bad? They have 6 wins. Well, this was the worst team in football for the first 7 weeks, a complete disgrace. Fired their coach, just a complete joke, really. And what happened? Well, after they fired their coach, they won a couple worthless games, and the division was so bad, it was like if the Panthers went out, they could win the division, and then they just lost. So they won just enough to get a bad draft pick, basically, and were a disgrace. The Falcons, everyone expected them to be bad. This is a team that hasn't had any identity since Matt Ryan left. And when you see how Matt Ryan looked in Indy this year, it's sort of like, well, damn, he was pretty old, I guess. Falcons aren't any good. This is one of those teams that like, oh, the Falcons are playing. Who cares? Never going to watch it. They come up on Red Zone. Who cares? Mariota, cap 5 out of 10 guy. Not fun to watch. It's like, it just boggles the mind when you see these teams like bring in these like Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota types. I don't get it. I do not get it. Because you're going to be peak rank 500. Like, are you better off going with like a young guy and giving him a shot? It just makes no sense to me. So we're going to sign a career backup and win 6 games. Yeah. Why? Nonsense. All right, so the Niners have been good and they got McCaffrey, but really what jumps out from this division is the defending Super Bowl champion Rams being laughed out the fucking league and embarrassed. And between Kingsbury and McVay just having no fucking clue what was going on all season and making fools of themselves consistently, Pete Carroll got to 8-8, and in a rebuilding year with Geno Smith, where the Seahawks were supposed to be the worst team in the whole fucking league, it just shows you how bad the rest of the league is. They're 8-8. They have the advantage over the Lions for the tiebreaker. Brutal. And when you look at the Rams, it's like, well, okay, Stafford's elbow is barking at him. Okay. What about their defense? What about all these big name guys? Cooper Kupp went down, sure, but this was not a team that was supposed to lose 11 plus games. This was supposed to be at least a 500 team. And you know, whenever you look at a team like the Cardinals and the Rams and all the pieces they have in the coaching, you think like, well, even if they take a step back, they're going to be 500. And they weren't. They were horrific. And the Niners are pretty dangerous. I don't really trust them that much with the rookie quarterback. People say, oh, Jimmy G could come back for the playoffs, but it's just not very trustworthy. So we can talk about a bit of the playoff picture here. And so the Chiefs have clinched the first seed, and the Eagles, we can just say the Eagles have clinched the first seed too, because the Giants are losing on purpose. So who are they probably going to play? The Dolphins and Steelers? Well, the Dolphins are a disgrace, and they need the Pats to lose to get in, and I don't think the Pats are going to lose. And then the Lions and the Packers, probably going to be the Packers, because the Seahawks have to lose to fall out, and they're playing the Rams. So if I just sort of shadow box these playoff matchups, I'm thinking it's going to be, obviously the Chiefs get a first round bye. So then it'll be like Bills Pats, Bills Stomp. Then it'll be Bengals Ravens, Bengals Stomp. And then Jags Chargers. That'll be a good game because the Jags aren't that good and the Chargers are poorly coached. But the rest of those games will be pretty much unwatchable. The Ravens just aren't any good. It'll be cute. Oh, they'll play the Bengals playoff era division rivalry, but give me a break. They won't have Lamar will be banged up or not there, mentally AFK. Won't matter. All right, so the Eagles will probably end up playing whoever they meet in the second round, of course. So as far as the Niners go, who they're going to be playing probably is the Giants, and this should just be a complete stomp. The Giants aren't that good. They'll have to play on the road. It's a miracle they even made the playoffs. When you look at the NFL this season, just in terms of like conference, it really does show how fucking terrible the league is. Look at this. Like, we're sorting by rank. Jacksonville's fourth. And so it's like Kansas City, we knew they'd be the Bills, we knew they'd be the Bengals, we knew they'd be. And then it's like, you're looking at this list, it's like, where are the Rams? Where are the Cards? Where are the Cowgirls even? Just a really, really disappointing season. And I know this is the AFC only, but man, oh man. And like here we see the full list. It's like these teams, like usually when, like you're talking about the top 10 teams, right? Like 16 teams, 16 teams make it, so you expect all the playoff teams to be good. Just look at the quality drop off after, 7, 8 teams. Ravens aren't any good, like overrated. Quarterback that's been figured out, offense that's been figured out. Chargers, good on paper, worst coached team in the league. Giants, not any good. Jags, like very hit or miss, young quarterback. Lions were a joke last year. And then it's like you see these teams and it's just like, wait, half the league is shit. Like when you start looking at these teams, it's like the Steelers like had no win condition and were like, don't let these 8 wins fool you, because like one of the teams has to win. And Dolphins, like laughing stock injury joke all season. Steelers, like losing on purpose with Trubisky. Like Bucks had one of the most like disappointing seasons imaginable, ravaged by, and it's just like, man, the league sucks dick. It's really gone downhill just in 1 year. So just to conclude our thoughts about the NFC, the Vikings, should you be scared of them? No. I mean, they're not a legitimate threat. And I think they'll bomb out in the first round. Cowboys are probably going to end up having to play the Bucks. How will that go? Bucks will probably win. I've had no faith in the Cowgirls all season. And congrats to Cgauch for winning the Super Bowl championship. Brady going off is huge for him. Weston makes another playoffs but loses. Sub for more.